Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Hinderer Maximus. Specifically, this is a bayonet version of the knife. It does come in an actual dagger ground blade, meaning it is sharp on both sides. This has a false edge up top and it is sharp on this side. And this is probably the more user-friendly version, but I'm not going to discredit the cool factor on the dagger version because, you know, there is some utilitarian benefit with having two edges, and you can technically disengage this somewhat safely and put it away. We'll talk about that. I am kind of on this infinite quest to bring a review of every Hinderer knife that has ever existed to my channel and have it all sorted in one playlist. So if you're into Hinderer knives and you've never been to my channel before, I do have a playlist with like 60-something videos on Hinderer knives and discussion topics, right? So if you're into that, check that playlist out. This knife was sent to me by Chris. Thank you so much, Chris. And also, I'd like to thank my generous patrons for supporting me right now. I usually have my stickers out, but they're not here. So thanks so much for supporting me during this time. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, get your hands on some cool stickers and some other benefits, there is, of course, a link down in the description. The support would mean the world to me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy. So the Maximus dagger comes in at, well, we call it the Maximus dagger. It's actually just the Hinderer Maximus. It's like 8.1 inches overall. Blade length is coming in at exactly 3.5 inches, and then your cutting edge is it's just shy of 3.25. How about some size comparisons? Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, the Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. So you can see there, this is not a small knife, but it is smaller in terms of height. You know, it's a little more compact, I guess, than a regular Hinderer. And it's, you know, it's a medium, well, it's a full-size knife. It just has more of a medium carry profile. Up against the Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. It's looking like they're the same length. That's the angle of the camera. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in extremely similar at about 8.1 inches overall. These knives are actually the same length. And then up against the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. Let's do some Hinderer size comparisons. Now, I know, guys, the best size comparison would be an actual Hinderer XM18. That's what people want to see. Let's do the XM24 first, because that's what I've got. The XM24 is a monstrous knife coming in at like 9.25 inches overall. So yeah, it's definitely smaller than that. Now what I do have here is a knife that is exactly the same overall length as a Hinderer XM18 and Hinderer Eclipse, because it is essentially the Eclipse body, and that's the ZT0392, long discontinued for anybody wondering. The ZT0392 factory custom, coming in at the exact same length and very similar size to an XM18. So if you're wondering, how does this thing stack up to an 18? Right about here. And it's got a different handle shape. So because I don't have an 18, but I still have my tie scale, there's the handle scale. That's a titanium scale on a Hinderer XM18 for comparison there. I hope that that is enough to give an appropriate size comparison. I really wanted to make that size comparison, but this is like the one time in my life I don't have an XM18 3.5 inch. I know that would be helpful. Okay, so this is pre-Triway. The Triway system, or as a lot of people just refer to it as Gen 6. Actually, the Generation 6 only applies to the XM18 3.5 inch because it's on its 6th generation. For literally every other Hinderer knife, it's a different generation, so I call it Triway and not Gen 6. For example, the XM24 is on its 3rd or 4th generation. The 3 inch is on its 3rd or 4th generation. The Eclipse is on its 3rd generation. Just here recently, they put the Triway in it. So Rick Hinderer is slowly adding the Triway system to all of his models. And if you guys are wondering, yes, it is confirmed. The Triway system is coming to the Maximus. And I wanted to get a pre-Triway Maximus in because when they announced this knife, and this was late Generation 4, is when this knife was announced. For the XM18, as far as its generation, it was on late Gen 4 when they announced the Maximus. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. A lot of people don't know, Hinderer actually did do a different dagger called, I think it was the TKI dagger, and that was a fully custom build. It was not perfectly symmetrical. The pivot was a little off center, but I think it had kind of the same idea. Those are worth thousands of dollars, and you cannot, there's very few of them, right? So he created a totally, different design. At the time, it was really, really something special because fully symmetrical flipper daggers, the original version that was released was a dagger. They did the bayonet later. They were just not a thing. The idea of a knife that was symmetrical and could flip properly, right, and it was actually sharpened on both sides but was not an OTF was a crazy. It's like, how do you do that? How do you put it away, right? Well, the nice thing about this knife is that you disengage it here like it's like a liner lock / subframe lock, whatever you want to call that, with overlays, right? But on the bayonet version, because it's a false grind up top, you can just, disengage it like you would any other titanium frame lock. On the dagger version, you can actually use this flipper tab here to do that. And for people wondering, on the bayonet one, yeah, you can actually use that to kind of wheel it out. I don't know that I'd really call that a front flip. It doesn't really work like that. You can't do that so much on the one that's sharp on both sides because your finger would be interacting with the blade over here. But yeah, you actually can do that. Now, since then, I'm not saying he was the first one to do it, but since then, we've seen a lot of symmetrical flipper daggers. And that became kind of a trend for a little bit. In fact, there's some that are really, Wee's got one right now, the Anks, right? Tucson did one. There was a bunch of different symmetrical flipper daggers out there that seemed to come to light after Hinderer did this. So this is an important model. And it is definitely one that will massively benefit, I think, from the tri-way pivot system. That being said, though, there are still a couple of these floating around out there. If I can find some links, for my affiliate stuff, I will provide them. But if not, there are a few Maximus daggers hovering around out there. So if you decide you still want one, you can definitely still pick them up. Let's do carry profile up against the... actually, no, let's do the hardware check first. Get out my handy-dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic stubby driver, 2 items that are extremely inexpensive and extremely recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every video. Just pull up in the store and look for knife maintenance. So the pivot is a flathead. You can use a penny, you can use a flathead screwdriver. The other side's a spanner side. So you can buy the actual Hinderer spanner tool, which I really like, but you don't need it. You truthfully can... You can make your own. You can cut a notch in for people who are like, don't, deface currency. Yeah, I agree. You can cut a notch in a bunch of different, like, harder, not steel. I mean, unless you have the right tools. But you can cut a notch in something that's, harder and just is the right thickness here. And you can use that to hold it while you turn. It's really easy. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It's not a proprietary system, at least by my definition. Or you can go buy a spanner bit at your local hardware store for between $1 and $5. So yeah, there's many ways to do that. As far as the screws on the overlays, I think they're actually T6. And we're going to check that here real quick. And are they? Wait a sec. Are they smaller than T6? Oh, they're hex. Yeah. Okay, so this is a really tiny hex size. So is the screw in the filler tab there in the pocket clip screw. I'll get out my actual Hinderer Armor's tool, which has the appropriate size. It comes with the appropriate bit. This is what I'm talking about, the thing that, has the spanner deals, and then it's also got the side to turn the head, which kind of works. Sometimes you need a little more leverage, but this is actually it's the right size for that. So it's the same size of head that comes on an actual Hinderer XM18. The pocket clip is different. It's only got a single hole, which means this pocket clip is made specifically for the Maximus dagger. It might be the same exact pocket clip on the new tri-way versions, but in my opinion, it should be the same pocket clip that comes on other Hinderer models, which is represented here by the SO392. It is an actual Hinderer clip. It's the same looking clip. It's just got 2 holes instead of 1. You should do that so that they're modular and you don't have to buy a special clip for this guy. That's my opinion. I consider that versus other Hinderer designs kind of that kind of stinks, because if you're somebody who collects a lot of Hinderer knives, and there's a lot, I mean, I'm one of them. I have tons and tons of Hinderer hardware, but it won't all fit on this guy because it's a special design and it's got its own unique clip. So, whatever. It's not really that big of a deal. The filler tabs, in this case, it is actually a single hole filler tab. But if I wanted to, I could take the filler tab out of this or any other Hinderer knife, right? My XM24. I could take that filler tab out and I could put it on this guy and just put a single screw in it. It'll work. That screw right there will actually fit, I believe, in the holes. In fact, I think I can show you guys here that this screw will actually fit, or the other screws will fit inside that hole. I think the hole is exactly the same size. Oh boy, it is actually, it's a very large hole. I'm actually really glad that I did this on camera. So you might actually need a specific filler tab for the Hinderer Maximus. I did not know that, but it's part of the reason why I do some of these things on camera. It's kind of nice to discover that sometimes right then and there in the moment. So there you go. That might actually be the case. If that is the case, then in my opinion, they absolutely should do the same size holes. It should be modular filler tabs, right? So the same hardware. You don't have to buy special hardware, wait for it to come back in stock, right? Now the pivot on the Maximus, I think, is actually the same pivot that comes on the XM24s and XM18 3.5 inch, right? The Eclipse, I think it actually is modular. But to my knowledge, that appears to be the only modular piece of hardware on this guy. So yeah, same point that I keep making. They need to make as many parts as possible modular with the other Hinderer designs so that people can get what they want, because that's part of the draw with Hinderer knives, is that you can make it your own if the parts are available. So that's my thought there. Anyways, let's do carry profile up against the Spyderco, the thickness up against Spyderco PM or Para 3. You can see it's a little bit thicker there because of the very large, I guess you could call this a liner lock. It's more like a frame lock with overlays. The very thick titanium scales there, and then the overlays on top make it a little bit thicker. But in terms of profile this way, it's really not much of an object. I mean, those two flippers stick out quite a bit. You can see there the length is about the same as a PM2. It's a little longer than a Para 3. At maximum height, I don't think... Yeah, it's almost exactly the same height as a PM2 at maximum height. The rest of the object is fairly slender. This still falls within the territory of a normal carry knife. I mean, if you're somebody who wears athletic shorts or skinny jeans, right, and you carry the Para 3 and bug out, this may not be something that you're going to enjoy. But for most people, this isn't going to be an overly cumbersome object. You know, there's a lot of different, sizes of knives out there, and this one still, for me at least, falls into the realm of normal. We are looking at a blade stock thickness of probably, like other Hinderer designs, probably 165 thousandths, which in this case is causing some thickness behind the edge issues, but still okay. Yeah, 165 thousandths, so it's a pretty thick blade, but it's not a lot of material, even in that thickness, right? And it's a fairly, it's not a overall design, where the dimensions are, yielding an overly heavy weight. So 4.2 ounces. It's over that ounce and inch mark that a lot of people go by, but I regularly carry knives that are between 4 and 6.5 ounces, so it's totally fine for me. It depends on your system and what you like to carry, but for most people, this is a pretty standard size, large or full size pocket knife, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. All right. Did we go over everything? I think we didn't talk about action. How's the action on this? You said it was running on nylon. Yeah, so the tri-way system in Hinderer knives, which is represented by this symbol here, of course, allows you the ability to switch out the internals between nylon, phosphor bronze, and bearings, and they come with all three. Generally, tri-ways come pre-installed with bearings. I don't like nylon, and it's basically because I know that the material is less durable than phosphor bronze or bearings. The benefit to nylon is that it does do a good job of keeping debris out, and they are usually very smooth, and that is the case here. It is very smooth. This is more of a hydraulic, almost glassy smoothness. It's not fall shed. It's not nearly as, drop sheddy as it might be with phosphor bronze, but it is very smooth. I know that there's a possibility that they can tear if the wrong kind of debris gets in there. It is super unlikely. Sometimes on disassembly, if you take the knife apart and you're having trouble getting it back together, I have had nylon washers get caught on my tools and then they get messed up, and that just sucks. So a lot of people, for that reason, don't prefer nylon. It is certainly not an attempt by Rick Hinderer or any other maker who uses nylon to save money, or that's not the case there. They use them because they are proven and functional, right? And some people do actually still prefer nylon, but that's part of the reason why Rick Hinderer made the tri-way system, is so that people could just put what they want in there and just end all of the complaints. I think that was a perfect way to go, you know what? Let me just make whatever everybody wants and just include it in the package. That's the nice thing about the tri-way. But this guy runs on nylon, and even though it does, yeah, it is super smooth, and the detent strength is great. The flipper tab is very easy to engage. It's nicely rounded off. It's got a nice area to land back here, and this is actually a joy to flip. It really does flip well, and it locks out solid. It's really, really great. So I have no issue with the action here. And I know that come, the tri-way version of this is just going to be better. So no issues there. Okay, let's talk about the anatomy here. So this is the controversial hourglass overlay scale that some people like and some people didn't. The benefit to this scale is because it is, shadow boxed down here and sort of cut in like an hourglass right there, is it shows the scale behind it. So on the versions of these knives where the titanium underneath is anodized, you get to enjoy that while looking straight down at it, right? Now, here's what I think would be better. And some people like this, and it's fine. I would like them to just continue this general shadow boxing all the way around. Partially because it yields the same idea. You get to enjoy whatever color it is underneath. But also, you get rid of this awkward area here. I don't really like this. Up here, the scales are a little bit pointy. You bring it back, you're less likely to engage with these areas with your finger, right? If you're engaging these little choil areas up here, I guess. This is a little bit devil horny, and that came out of my mouth too fast, but that's kind of what it feels like to me. They're little devil horns right there. And it does look kind of cool, right? It adds a lot of character to the handle, but I think it would look a little bit more classy, and it would solve some of the aesthetic issues and some of the physical issues that in my opinion, are present on this knife. The pointiness up here. Here, and here would get rid of that. That being said, it's still really not that big of a deal because most of the time you're going to be holding this knife like this, and you're not really engaging here. There is plenty of texturing on these scales, and I think these are carbon fiber. The knife does not usually come standard in carbon fiber. If it does, you're definitely going to pay more money for it. Standard, it comes with G10. I'm saying that because I've got a carbon fiber textured scale on my XM24, and it's got the similar weaves, right? So I believe this is also carbon fiber. It just has a different texture pattern. The pattern's going this way, whereas this guy, it's going horizontally. In any case, that's just my take on the scales. I also would really like them to not use the little teeny tiny hex size. I would like, I wish Hinderer used T8 on everything. On Hinderers that come with the hex sizes on the screws, like the XM series, they're hex, and that's fine. I wish they were all. I know you can get actual Hinderer factory hardware that are Torx, right? You just have to buy them afterwards. But they've got so many different, screws. I wish they were all just the exact same, the Hinderer style with T8, right? That's what I wish they all were. And I think it would still look okay. Obviously, the smaller head size being, the size that has to hold the scale onto the frame. And the idea, I think, with the smaller head size is it draws your attention away from the hardware. I really wouldn't mind either way. I'm sorry, I wouldn't mind if the head sizes were larger. I'd rather be able to get at it. Some people might. Underneath, there is a single standoff, and it's being held together by these screws here, which is the larger hex size, and I think that's fine. And then the pivot. So this integrity, the structural integrity for the frame is between the pivot and the screw back here. So that's fine. Minor nitpicks. Everything up here, nicely rounded off. All the little edges, the chamfering done on the edges of the titanium is great. Lots of open space here, so this is super easy to clean out. As you use knives, they do get debris in there. For the most part, the debris is not going to affect a knife like this, on nylon or phosphor bronze. It's not going to affect it too much, but it's nice to keep your knives clean, and it's nice to be able to get in there with a cloth and just clean it out. Up here, like I said, with this being the bayonet grind, this is all nicely knocked down. And this is preferable for people wanting to easily engage and disengage the knife. It is slightly less convenient to use this guy right here, which is what you'd have to use if it was double ground, right? You gain the cool factor in the ability to have two separate edges, which technically allows you to use the knife longer before you have to resharpen it. You can continuously use one edge and then save the other edge for whatever, right? It's like you got your letter opening edge and you got your hard use edge, whatever. But I don't know. I mean, people are going to see it differently. I think it was smart that he offered this grind. In terms of being able to puncture, this blade very much excels at that. That's the idea with a blade style like this. Your puncture tasks, you're definitely going to be able to get in and do that, no problem. Unfortunately, because it is 165 thousandths down the center, it does. And by the way, that tip goes right down, or that line goes right to the tip. It's perfect. This is pretty thick behind the edge. Will it still slice? Yeah, it'll still slice. It'll still cut. In terms of general EDC tasks, you're going to be just fine. if you're doing really precision cutting, right, if you like a more of an open L geometry, this isn't going to be like that. But in terms of what 80% of us use our knives for every single day, is this going to be fine? Yeah, it's a Hinderer edge, so it's sharp. They definitely slice, they definitely cut. And this one is CPM 20CV. CPM 20CV, S35VN, whatever. All this, I'd take that. I like Hinderer's 20CV. They do a good heat treat. They also do a good heat treat on S35VN. Perfectly fine. This has the old school Hinderer tumbling. A little bit heavier on the scratches, and I kind of prefer this older tumbling. The newer tumbling is a little more scratchy. It's okay, but I really like this one. They do come in all the, the different flavors and styles. I've seen DLC ones. I've seen working finish. There's even a few on the aftermarket. I think the stonewashed black DLC. Pick that up while you can. I don't know that that's always going to be around. But yeah, and then you have all the different scale colors, right? Every color that you can imagine. They even make titanium overlay scales for this guy, which would just be... I'll give you guys the version of this that I would want, because after handling this, I decided, yeah, at some point I am actually going to buy one of these for myself. I'm going to wait for Triway. But what I'd love is exactly the, if they change the scale the way that I said, doing the overlays, or I'm sorry, the shadow boxing, but cover this area and bring it back up here, but titanium in this exact texturing, almost looks like chainmail. Oh, I would die. A lot of people are like, why? So you're going to have titanium underneath and then you're going to have a titanium overlay? Just for modularity's sake, yeah, I would like the option to have that, but I would just love that. I don't care if it adds weight or not. Yeah, that would be really, really cool. Back to the blade though, you can just see Hinderer on this side and it says USA 20CV on the other side, so that's great. This version does not have the steel lock bar insert, but the Triway, whoops, oh man, a whole bunch of dumb stuff just happened all in a row there. The Triway will, I think, inevitably have the steel lock bar insert in there, and then you'll have the bearings and all that stuff. You don't necessarily need a steel lock bar insert. This is a carbonized titanium lock face, so it does lock up securely without there being any slippage. You can see there we're locking up at maybe about 45%. This one's a user, so it looks to be slightly off center. I don't judge centering on user knives. Most of my Hinderers, and I've owned 27 different Hinderer knives. All of them except for like one or two came centered, and the ones that weren't centered, they're very easy to center up. Usually you just have to crank on the pivot a little bit. If not, you can do that. I've got that video on how to center a blade. You just use the, you can go watch it if you want, but it's essentially tightening down the handle screws, before the pivot, and you use the piece of paper and wedge it in. You can watch that video if you want to. So I'm not going to judge this for centering. It does lock up completely and totally solid. Absolutely. No blade play up, down, left, or right. This has, I believe, does it have an internal stop? I think it does. Forgot to check on that. Let me look in my light here and see if I can actually see it. Yeah, it's definitely, it's an internal, you can see the bar right there. So it's an internal stop, and that's fine. Those function really well. And in a lot of ways, they function the same way as external, the external stops, meaning it mitigates pressure away from the pivot. This is a knife that is certainly capable of some pretty serious use. The nice thing about it having the overlay scales is that you can squeeze it as hard as you want and you're not going to affect, the position of that lock bar on the tang. On a frame lock that's exposed, the harder you squeeze, the more the frame lock moves in, which definitely adds security during use, but it also can wear away at the frame lock a little bit more over time. So it might travel to the other side faster. I have never seen a Hinderer knife travel any lock bar, whether it's a liner lock or a frame lock. I've never seen it travel all the way over and actually create lock rock, which is the fear. That's the issue there, right? The irony, being that the design is it's meant to lock up super securely because you're holding it in place. But if it does wear all the way over and then that last little bit of contact wears away, then it can create lock rock. I've never ever seen that happen. Even the oldest Hinderers, right? People saying they're locking up at 100%. At that point, it's locking in so securely with that carbonized titanium lock face. There's so much surface contact. It's just not likely to happen. But anyways, with this guy, it doesn't matter how hard you squeeze. It's just going to kind of settle in. Most of these Maximus staggers or Maximus bayonets, they settle in at like 50% or so, and they just stay there. So again, little nitpicks here. And by the way, the pocket clip's great. It's similar to other Hinderer knives, right? It's going to carry about right here. There's not a lot of the knife sticking up out of your pocket, so it's great. Oh, ergonomically, yeah, this is actually really comfortable to hang on to. I don't have a problem with any of this. There is kind of a choil up here. It's not super convenient to use. You can use it. It's not that big of a deal. I appreciate the aesthetic flow what they were going for here is getting all the lines correct and getting something that's aesthetically appealing, and at the same time it is functional and easy to hang on to. And they accomplished that, right? So I like that. It's not the most ergonomically friendly item in the entire world, but I'd give it a solid B+. I think it's plenty easy to hang on to, and you have a little bit of freedom. It's got a pretty large handle, so you can get a full purchase back here. You can choke up a little bit, and there's plenty of cutting edge. No issues. Minor nitpicks. All the hardware needs to be, in my opinion, modular with the other XM18 or XM variants or Hinderer variants, right? Usually the pocket clips are always modular. A lot of the pivot hardware is, a lot of the screws are. They've got a lot of really unique parts in this guy. I think I'd like to see just the normal Hinderer stuff on there. This area up here is a little bit sharp, so shadow boxing it all the way around and getting rid of these areas I think would have been better. The dagger versions are going to be much less safe to engage and disengage, but you can absolutely do it. This version is totally fine, though. And then, truthfully, there needs to be kind of a cutout here. And I know that that robs the design of its perfect symmetry, but there needs to be a little bit more room to engage this lock bar in here. I think maybe a little bit of a scallop right here and a little bit of a scallop on this side would make it ever so slightly easier to engage. This lock bar is not going to wear over quickly, but as it does, every little bit is going to make it a little tiny bit harder to get in there. And I find that I have to already push a little bit to dig the meat of my thumb in there and properly disengage it. All those little complaints aside, oh, and I don't like anything T6 or the same size, you know, in the hex versions. All these little tiny things aside, this is a wonderful knife. This is an amazing design. It is one of the most aesthetically pleasing knives that Hinderer has ever done. And it's just cool, right? I mean, there's like this design and the cutting edge, right? Is it going to be beneficial over most pocket knives in most situations? No. In fact, a lot of other regular, you know, knives, single or, you know, with the single edge, right? There's a lot more benefits there, right? But for people wanting to carry something like this, you know, can you use it in any normal EDC situation and a lot of stuff outside of that? Yeah, absolutely. And if you do a lot of puncture tasks, then a blade like this is really going to be great. I still, you know, even considering this is pre-Triway, yeah, I mean, if you really, really like nylon or you just don't have a problem with it and you just don't want, you're like, I'm one of those people who likes the carbidized titanium lock face, I don't want the insert, then yeah, go for this. This in its current form is still a recommendable knife. It is pricey at $425, but that's the same price that comes with Hinderer knives in general, and you are getting a lot more attention to detail in terms of human interaction. These are made in the United States. Every last little piece of this knife is made internally at Hinderer knives, and that there's something to be said for that. If you don't find value in those things, then this isn't going to be worth it to you, but you guys know I'm a huge Hinderer fan, so maybe I'm a little biased here, but I love this knife. I think this is cool. With a few tweaks and a few changes, I think this thing could really be something special. When they do a Triway version of this, no matter what they decide to do with the scales and the pocket clip, I will absolutely pick one of these up in the dagger blade, and I will wait for titanium scales, and I will make a titanium version of this. I love the idea of this thing on bearings with a lock bar insert. I think that's would just be amazing. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it. This will be going on the Hinderer knives playlist and my most recommended knives playlist, but for most of us, probably, if you want to pick this up, right, I would say just wait a little bit and there'll be a Triway version, in which case I will review that one as well. I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody.